21st Century Entrepreneurship with Martin Piskarik.
Did you know that up until now, all psychedelic drug development has been done with synthetically, artificially manufactured substance recreated in the lab? But Filament has actually, for the first time, discovered how to create natural psychedelic drug candidates, which are now, in fact, becoming the standard of use by researchers and early access doctors all around the world. My name is Ben. I have spent my whole career developing new and better ways of making plant extracts and commercializing those products into a variety of different industries. Myself and some colleagues from a previously exited company started Filament Health together in 2020. And this was because at the time, there were no naturally focused psychedelics companies. And in fact, all research into psychedelic compounds like psilocybin and DMT, et cetera, had been done with synthesized chemicals made artificially in a lab. And this contrasts significantly, obviously, to the vast majority of humanity's experience with these substances, which has, for the most part, been totally natural. Humans are very good at going out into nature and finding food, coloring, makeup, art, things for their art, things to draw with, things to, stem their hunger, give them energy, medicine, you name it. That's where humans have always gone to get their substances, and psychedelics are no different. Many cultures around the world use different psychedelic species of fungi and plants for many different religious and ceremonial purposes, and that continues right up to this day. So at Filament, we used all of our experience in creating botanical drugs in order to make the very first psychedelic botanical drugs, and actually get those drugs into clinical studies where we can study their effectiveness for various diseases. And in large part because of the overwhelming nature of the substance use disorder crisis that we have in our society, this is where we decided to focus the development of our drugs. Because psychedelics have long been used as a treatment for various substance use disorders, starting back in the 40s and 50s in the olden days, or I should say the old and modern days, but continuing right up to the current era. We have very good research from NYU in alcohol use disorder that showed that 2 doses of psilocybin reduced the amount of heavy drinking days in patients by 83%. There's research from Johns Hopkins in smoking cessation showing that people 1 year later after their psychedelic session were 67% completely abstinent from smoking, and that has continued in other areas as well, in such areas as stimulant use disorder and opioid use disorder. So that's kind of like the overall thing. We're experts in plant extraction. Psychedelics are plant extracts. Psychedelics can treat potentially substance use disorders. Substance use disorder being a humongous problem in society, causing untold amounts of human suffering and tragedy. Our business activities include several different areas. Number one, we sponsor and run our own internal clinical trials in the field of substance use disorder. We have a phase 2B study in stimulant use disorder, as well as a phase 2A study in opioid use disorder. And in addition to our internal clinical trials, we have many researchers that reach out to us from around the world, asking if they can use our natural drug candidates in their own studies. And through this program, we have probably 30 or 40 different studies running all around the world in all kinds of different areas: depression, anxiety, substance use disorder, alcohol use disorder, all kinds of different things that different researchers are using. And they come to us because of our reputation in the industry as a very high quality supplier of these drugs. And we do this for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, it's to give back to the research community. Nobody in the psychedelics industry, was the person responsible for inventing psychedelics. Everything is based on prior research that was done by scientists that came before them. And so we think it's important to feed back into the psychedelic scientific body of knowledge. In addition, we gain a lot of favor and friendships with really smart and interesting researchers all around the world. And, these are the people that governments can turn to and say, when it's time to look at legalization, they turn to who are the scientists that have already been doing work in the field, that are well known and well respected, and building relationships with those kinds of people is obviously very important. But also supplying these kinds of studies gives us access to really important data. It shows us how our drugs are working in new areas where we may not have thought about doing our own research, and gives us clues for new avenues in which to develop our drugs. Not only that, the safety data, which is to say the number of people that have been exposed to your drug, this is a crucial data for when you are looking to go get your own drugs approved. And essentially, collecting that data from the study run and funded by others is a very efficient way of getting that data. Another activity that I'll touch on that we do is, we're the largest supplier of psilocybin for expanded access use. And what does that mean? Well, expanded access, sometimes called compassionate use or early access, these are programs whereby people who are in a serious or life-threatening condition, they can apply for access to unapproved drugs, or drugs that are still experimental that haven't yet been approved. And in Canada, we have quite a large program called the Special Access Program, and we are by far the largest supplier of this program. And several hundred people have in fact taken our drugs through this program in Canada for a variety of different indications. These aren't, as I mentioned, these aren't approved drugs. And for that reason, we don't charge any money for it. We actually just provide it for free, including the logistical support, because we believe that it's more important to get the drugs to the patients in need as quickly as possible. But again, through this program, we're building very valuable experience working with physicians, working with patients, asking them how they're doing, asking them what their experiences were like, and really building bridges and laying the groundwork for a future psychedelic industry. People often ask, what makes a natural drug different than a synthetic drug? And the answer is that a natural drug gets extracted from a natural source. In the case of psilocybin, the natural source is the Psilocybe cubensis mushroom, or commonly known as the magic mushroom. And because we're making a pharmaceutical product, we don't go, cavorting around in the woods looking for different mushrooms, although many people do that, and it can be a lot of fun. We actually grow the mushrooms in our GMP laboratory under strictly controlled conditions in order that they can provide the raw input material for our extraction process. Our extraction process is something that we've developed internally using all of our previous expertise and experience. And it's something that has now been patented over 40 times in different countries all around the world, because we were actually the very first company to manufacture pharmaceutical grade natural psychedelic drug candidates. And so the patents cover various areas such as extraction, purification, standardization, as well as composition of matter for the various human deliverable forms. So some of our drugs are in oral capsules, some of our drugs are in sublingual tablets, and so different forms have yielded different patents as well. To make a synthetic drug is actually completely different. The way you do that is you buy raw materials, which are essentially base chemicals from chemical suppliers, and then you make a series of different reactions in order to get the purified target compound. The biggest difference in the final product between the two is that if you synthesize psilocybin, your final product will contain psilocybin and then those sort of artificial impurities, right? That will be essentially the essence of your drug. Whereas if you make a natural extract and a botanical drug, as we do, your drug will contain not just the primary compound, psilocybin in this case, but also the secondary compounds from the raw material. A good analogy is like a cup of coffee, right? Coffee has caffeine, but it also has many other compounds that give it its flavor, its aroma, its color, it's all these different things. People obviously prefer coffee rather than pure isolated caffeine. And while that example is a little kind of like folksy, the same thing does kind of hold true in psychedelics, right? There are other compounds in the magic mushroom. These compounds did evolve in nature over millions or hundreds of millions of years, probably for some reason. And we believe that the appropriate way to consume these compounds is all together in one package. And so the delicate art of making a botanical drug is, how do you figure out a process that keeps all of these secondary compounds and primary compounds in the same ratio as they were found in the natural substance, yet also have it purified and standardized and highly refined enough so that it can qualify as a pharmaceutical product. So it's all about striking that balance. On the one hand, you have kind of like the raw mushroom, which is highly variable and very unstable and can degrade and will actually rot within hours after picking it. And on the other hand of the spectrum, you have essentially synthesized, isolated psilocybin. And so we fall somewhere in the middle, and we like to think that it's the best of both worlds, right? It is the full spectrum natural product that people know and love, with all of the kind of regulatory pharmaceutical quality requirements necessary for running clinical trials. This is, in fact, my third botanical extraction startup company. So I've been working in the startup world for essentially my whole career. I've never had a profit-making company, and because of that, it's always extremely stressful, right? A startup company, you're always thinking about, how long is my burn rate? How many months of cash flow do I have? If you're very lucky, it's how many years of cash flow do I have? But that's not usually the case. And for myself and my colleagues in this world, it's very important to take care of your mental health. And I've seen several cases where the stress, very understandably, has gotten to especially CEOs and founders, and with very, very disastrous results. In fact, such a thing actually happened in Filament with one of our co-founders. It's a very sad story. So I would say, like, it's important to have, one of the things I've learned over the years is to have self-compassion. Like, if it feels like it's too much and you want to take a break, that's not because you're useless and you're lazy. It's because probably you just need a break. and you can trust yourself to know what's the best. Take a few hours, like our kind of like overdriving brain that like makes us feel worthless and guilty is telling you like, what do you mean you're going to go on a walk for 2 hours? And then your initial reaction is that you feel all guilty about this. I must be lazy. I must be useless. But then if you take a further step back, maybe you will think that it's actually crazy to think that way, right? To punish yourself for wanting to go for a walk around the block, right? And it's incredibly important, and the results can be incredibly disastrous, like I said. And no company is worth the pain of what you could go through your family and everyone that you know, and it's just not worth it at the end of the day. It's just not worth it. So that's one of the things I've learned over the years is definitely you have to take care of yourself. Otherwise, like I said, it's just not worth the risk. In terms of getting access to psychedelic treatment, so far psychedelics are mostly illegal everywhere in the world, and so the access is going to be through the underground. But on the other hand, it's actually pretty widely available. So if people are curious to try it, I would say, reach out to trusted people in the underground. I can't obviously advocate for illegal substance use, but I mean, obviously everybody knows this is going on, and it is especially popular with people in the entrepreneurial mindset and people in Silicon Valley. I mean, now we see that Elon Musk's buddies are taking over psychedelic drug developers, and this is obviously because they know of the power of these substances and believe that we need a bigger place for them in society. But the overarching thing is, if you think you are having a mental health crisis or episode, like, definitely reach out and get help from somebody. There's definitely no shame. You just need to do it right away. One of the things that's unique about making drugs from natural sources is that oftentimes these are plants and fungi that come from various places in the world that may have a history of use by humans or not. But one way or the other, it's really important to recognize that these plants may have very important cultural significance to local communities all around the world. And it's very important to recognize that contribution of the traditional communities, as well as make sure that the harvesting that you're doing is done in a sustainable way. Because obviously we want these plants to be available, not just for us to come in and buy it, but also for the local community to have access for many generations. And a good example of this is the iboga plant. So ibogaine is a psychedelic compound that comes from the iboga root. The iboga root is a shrub that grows in West Africa and has been traditionally used by local people called the Bwiti for religious and spiritual ceremonies going back forever and ever. But with the rising interest in ibogaine, unfortunately, there's a big problem of piracy and stealing the iboga roots in order to make drugs for Western gringo shamans. But if we work under the auspices of something that's known as the Nagoya Protocol, the Nagoya Protocol is a UN treaty that governs the equitable benefit sharing and sustainable supply of these kinds of ethnobotanical raw materials. We can actually work with local suppliers and local growers in order to cultivate and grow a long-term sustainable supply. As I said, not just for us, but for the local people as well. And in this way, we can actually help preserve the long-term supply rather than just like go in, and if we did nothing, then probably the steady state would be eventual piracy and extinction because of overharvesting and overpopulation. And so this is kind of one of the unique things about making drugs from natural sources, especially ones that get harvested overseas and then brought to our facility to make drugs. To learn more and to find out how you could potentially access our drugs through the right channels, head to our website, filament.health. Follow us on social and look us up on LinkedIn.
21st Century Entrepreneurship with Martin Piskarik.
Imagine a space where triumphs, trials, and tales of entrepreneurship come alive. Welcome to the 21st Century Entrepreneurship Podcast, a gold awarded journey hosted by Martin Piskarik, connecting with listeners in 95 countries and ranking in the top 0.5% of all podcasts. Join our exclusive community, elevate your perspective, and embark on the path to success.